My husband said he needed space. The day after my father's funeral, then secretly built a custody case against me while I was grieving, but he didn't expect I'd fight back with everything I had. The day after my father's funeral, my husband looked me dead in the eye and said, "So how much longer are you going to milk this tragedy?" I didn't even know how to breathe after that. It was barely 24 hours since I'd buried the only person left in my family. My mom passed when I was 17, and now that Dad's gone, there's literally no one else. No siblings, no cousins I talk to. It's just me, my husband Jonas, and our daughter Nora, who just turned 5. That morning, I was still in my black dress. I hadn't unpacked the suitcase from the hotel near the cemetery. The house still smelled like funeral flowers, and the framed picture of my dad was sitting on the dining table with the program from the service folded neatly beside it. I was standing at the sink, holding a mug of cold coffee I forgot to drink, when Jonas came in and dropped that line like it was just some clever joke. I turned around, and he was just smirking. Not even malicious. Just detached, like he was tired of pretending to care. When I didn't say anything, he walked past me, picked up the framed photo, and said, "Are we keeping this out forever?" It's kind of a downer. I wanted to scream, but all I did was whisper, "That's my dad." He shrugged and said, "I know. I was there, remember? I gave up my weekend." His weekend. That's what my dad's funeral was to him, a scheduling inconvenience. For context, Jonas didn't come to the hospital. He didn't sit with me when I signed the cremation papers. He didn't even ride in the car with me to the cemetery. He said it was too emotional and that he grieves differently. But what he actually did was stay in the hotel room and order takeout while I stood by my father's grave alone, holding our daughter's hand, trying not to collapse. The moment we got home, he started complaining that the house felt heavy. He didn't mean the air, he meant me. In the days that followed, I tried to manage it all. Our bills, funeral paperwork, Nora asking why Grandpa wasn't coming back. Jonas, meanwhile, started disappearing more. He said he needed space to process. But processing looked a lot like spending nights out, coming home past midnight and sleeping until noon. The breaking point that week was when I asked if he could handle daycare pickup just once, so I could go meet the attorney about settling my dad's estate. He looked at me and said, "Can't your dead dad wait?" I stared at him, waiting for him to take it back. He didn't. I ended up dragging Nora across town in rush hour traffic, sitting in that attorney's office with her drawing on the back of legal documents while I signed forms with shaking hands. Jonas didn't text, didn't call, didn't ask how it went. That night, while I was folding laundry, Nora asked if Daddy was mad at me. I told her no, but my voice cracked, and she looked at me like she already knew it was a lie. When Jonas finally came home, around 11:30, he was already annoyed before he stepped inside. He kicked off his shoes, looked at the sink full of dishes, and muttered, "You used to be more fun." I followed him into the living room and asked calmly if we could talk. He said no, he was tired. I said I needed help. He rolled his eyes. Then he said, "I didn't sign up to live with a walking funeral." Something broke inside me. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just walked to the bedroom, locked the door, and sat on the floor while my daughter fell asleep in the next room. I thought I'd have at least that night to be left alone. But 5 minutes later, he was banging on the door so hard the frame shook. And then I saw his phone screen light up through the crack in the door. A text from someone named Melinda, with a heart emoji. I stared at the glowing phone screen like it might burn a hole through the door. Melinda, heart emoji, 9:46 p.m. Still thinking about last weekend. Friday works if you're free. My stomach flipped. My first thought wasn't even, he's cheating. It was, please let this be some misunderstanding. I needed to believe, just for a second, that this wasn't what it looked like. I opened the door. Jonas was standing there, fist still raised mid-knock, breathing heavy like I was the one being unreasonable. I said, "Who's Melinda?" He blinked, then scoffed. "Jesus, you're going through my phone now?" I hadn't touched his phone. He left it on the kitchen counter, screen up, with the brightness on full blast. I told him that, but he just walked past me and grabbed it, holding it tight like I was some thief in my own house. "I don't know what game you're playing," he said, "but this paranoia thing, it's getting old." "Is she real?" I asked. "Just answer that." He wouldn't. He just muttered something about emotional boundaries and not everything being my business. That told me everything. He went to the guest room. I followed him, not because I wanted to fight, but because I was done pretending I didn't see what I saw. He slammed the door in my face. I stood outside it with my hands shaking and my breath caught in my throat. I didn't sleep that night. Nora had a nightmare around 2 a.m. and came into bed with me, crying about monsters under the bed. I told her she was safe. I didn't believe it, but I said it anyway. The next morning, Jonas acted like nothing happened. Sat at the table, scrolling on his phone, eating toast. He didn't look at me. When I asked if he could take Nora to preschool, he said, "Not my turn," and walked out the door. I called my dad's lawyer during lunch and asked how to add security to the estate case. I didn't mention Jonas, not yet, but something inside me had shifted. A quiet voice in the back of my head whispered, "Protect yourself." That night, it all exploded. Nora spilled a glass of juice on the rug. It was a total accident, and she immediately started crying, already scared of how her dad might react. I picked her up, said it was okay, that we'd clean it. Jonas walked in at that exact moment, saw the stain, and lost it. He didn't yell at her, he yelled at me. "You let her do whatever she wants. You coddle her. No wonder this house is a mess." I told him to calm down. He got louder. Nora buried her face in my neck, trembling. Then, Jonas looked at me and said, "You're not even fit to be a parent right now." That broke something in me I didn't know was still intact. I put Nora to bed early. She asked if Daddy was mad again. I said no, even though my hands were shaking so hard I could barely pull the blanket over her. I walked back to the living room and found Jonas already half-packed, backpack on the couch, keys in hand. I asked where he was going. He said, "Melinda's, since you already think that's what's happening." And then he added, "Maybe she won't make me feel like a prisoner in my own home." I said, "You're not a prisoner. You're just being asked to care." He looked at me with disgust. "You don't know what caring even is anymore." And then, as if that wasn't enough, he added one more thing before slamming the door behind him. "By the way, Melinda's not just anyone. She's someone who actually listens, not someone who uses grief as a shield." I stood there in the silence afterward, not even angry, just numb. I cleaned up the spilled juice, wiped the counters, packed Nora's lunch for the next day. When I finally sat down to breathe, my phone lit up. It was an Instagram notification. Jonas had posted a story, a photo of his beer at some dimly lit bar, and tagged Melinda. But the real twist? I tapped on her profile. Her most recent post said, "Excited for a new beginning. Full custody hearing starts Monday. Wish me luck." She wasn't just the other woman. She was a mother fighting her own custody battle, and Jonas was next in line to try it with me. The next morning, Jonas was still gone. I half expected him to crawl back in before sunrise, maybe half drunk, maybe full of excuses. But there was nothing, just silence. I made Nora pancakes because that's what my dad used to make me on hard days. She ate 2 bites and said she missed him. I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to lie again. I walked her to preschool in a daze, then sat in the parking lot with my hands frozen on the steering wheel. My phone buzzed. A text from Jonas. "I'll be by this weekend to get Nora. We'll talk about a more permanent arrangement then." A permanent arrangement? My blood went cold. He hadn't said a word about this before. Not once. Not when he stormed out. Not when he threw his bag over his shoulder and basically admitted he was cheating. I typed back, "You're not taking her anywhere without a conversation and an agreement." He left me on read. Again. By the time I got home, I was shaking. I didn't know if it was rage or panic. Maybe both. I did something I hadn't planned. I called Melinda. I found her number through a mutual Facebook connection we both had from the dance school. My hands were sweating as I dialed. I expected her to hang up, but she answered. Hello? Hi, this is Callie, I think. She cut me off. Jonas's wife? I didn't even say yes. Just stayed silent. She exhaled. Look, I didn't know he was married. He told me you two were separated, living in the same house for your daughter. My throat tightened. He's trying to take our daughter now. Her voice changed instantly. What? He said he's coming this weekend to get her, to set up something more permanent. Melinda was quiet for a long time. Then she said, he said the same thing to me. About his son, about how his ex was unstable and he had to step up. She didn't have a son. Wait, I said, confused. I thought you had a daughter? I do, she said. But he told me I was his second serious relationship, that he never wanted kids, that Nora was her decision. I felt the air leave my lungs. He was rewriting me, rewriting our child, turning us into background noise in whatever story he was pitching to this woman. I'm sorry, she said. If I'd known— No, I said, cutting her off. You didn't do this. He did, I thanked her, hung up, and just sat there for a moment. Then I started writing everything down. Dates, messages, voicemails, every lie I could remember. By that evening, I had a small folder of evidence. I called a family lawyer, booked an appointment. It wasn't cheap, but I didn't care. I needed something real, something solid, something that wouldn't gaslight me into doubting myself again. That night, Jonas showed up. No warning. Just a knock at the door while I was brushing Nora's hair for bed. He walked in like he owned the place. I didn't invite him. He just pushed past me, said, I'm here to see my daughter. I told him, not tonight. We're sticking to the schedule from now on. He laughed. You think you can dictate the rules now? I'm not thinking, I said. I know. He looked past me and called for Nora. She ran out and hugged him. And in that moment, I saw exactly what he was doing, playing the devoted dad when he needed to look like one. I'm taking her Saturday, he said, lifting his chin like it was already decided. No, I said. Not without an agreement, not without supervision. His eyes narrowed. You don't get to make that call. I stepped between him and the hallway. Actually, I do. I already spoke to a lawyer. That stopped him cold. He muttered something under his breath, grabbed his keys, and turned toward the door. But before he left, he said, If you think I'm going down without a fight, you've got another thing coming. Then he left, slammed the door hard enough to rattle the picture frames. And 10 minutes later, this is the part that still makes my heart race, my phone buzzed again. It was an email from Jonas. But he didn't mean to send it to me. It was for Melinda. He accidentally hit reply all. The subject line? Temporary custody plan. Let's stick to the timeline. Her breakdown will help us in court. I didn't sleep that night. Not a single minute. I kept rereading that email. The way he wrote it, like I was some unstable obstacle. A strategy, not a person. Not the mother of his child. Just a pawn he could move off the board. The words echoed in my head until morning. Her breakdown will help us in court. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I made Nora breakfast like normal, strawberries and toast, her favorite. I packed her little backpack, braided her hair, kissed her cheek, and smiled like everything was fine. Because for her, it had to be. Once she was dropped off, I drove straight to the lawyer's office. I showed her the email, the screenshots, the notes I'd kept, down to the minute, of every time Jonas bailed, yelled, lied, or disappeared. I told her everything. She looked at me and said, You're doing the right thing, and you're doing it the right way. I don't know why that made me want to cry. We started drafting a custody petition, real, legal, binding, with restrictions, with required supervision. She told me we'd likely need to go to court, but I didn't care. I wanted it all in writing. I wanted to be done playing his game. That night, Jonas showed up unannounced again. He tried to walk in like always, but this time I stood in the doorway. He looked me up and down, like he was trying to decide what version of me he was dealing with. I'm here to talk, he said. No, I replied. You're here to spin more lies, and we're done with that. He raised an eyebrow. You're being dramatic. No, I said. I'm being prepared. Then I handed him a copy of the letter from my lawyer. His face changed immediately. This is what you want now? Lawyers? Court? I didn't flinch. Number, I want peace. But since you turned this into a performance, I'm building a record. He tried to laugh it off, but it didn't land. Not this time. You're insane, he muttered. You'll lose. I'm not the one writing custody strategies with my mistress, I said quietly. Accidentally hitting reply all was your mistake. Trying to weaponize my grief? That's where you lost everything. He went pale. I could see it in his eyes, the first flicker of fear. He turned on his heel and walked off without saying another word. The next few days were quiet. No surprise visits, no snide texts. Just silence. It was suspicious. Too clean. Until Friday night. I had just put Nora to bed when my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a notification from our shared Life 360 app, the one we set up years ago when Nora started preschool. I'd honestly forgotten it was still active, but Jonas hadn't. He had just added a new location alert, one that triggered when I was away from home for more than 3 hours. He was trying to track my movements. I sat on the couch, gripping my phone, pulse pounding. Why now? Why that alert? I opened my email, and there it was. A forwarded message from a private investigator. He was trying to build a case against me, not just paint me as unstable, but negligent. The timestamp in the email proved he'd been collecting data for weeks. Photos of me coming out of the grocery store, daycare, the library. One showed me sitting in my car, staring into space. He labeled that one, possible dissociative behavior, potential risk if left unattended with child. I felt the blood drain from my face. This wasn't about custody anymore. This was warfare. But the twist, the part that made me go cold? The email thread was forwarded to Melinda. She replied with 2 words. She's slipping. She wasn't just a bystander. She was helping him. The moment I realized Melinda was helping him, something inside me snapped. Not the kind of break that makes you fall apart, the kind that makes you razor sharp. I wasn't just dealing with a manipulative husband anymore. I was up against a calculated duo, one building a case to take my daughter, and the other helping him twist my grief into a weapon. So I did what I always do when I'm scared. I got organized. First, I printed everything. The emails, the Life 360 logs, the investigators' photos. I made copies, time-stamped each one, and dropped them in a labeled binder. I sent it to my lawyer with a simple subject line, "Now we play my way." Next, I filed a temporary restraining order. Jonas had been surveilling me without consent. That was enough. But the icing on the cake? His private investigator had taken at least one photo of me inside my car, through the windshield. That counted as stalking. The judge agreed. Within 72 hours, Jonas was served. The look on his face when he showed up that weekend and saw the sheriff deputy waiting at my door was something I'll never forget. He tried to talk his way out of it, tried to play confused. The deputy shut it down. "You've been officially ordered not to approach the property. If you have issues, take it up with your attorney." Jonas didn't even look at me as he walked away. But I didn't care. I was too busy watching my daughter draw chalk hearts on the sidewalk, safe and smiling. That wasn't the end, though. 2 weeks later, my lawyer presented the court with everything. Jonas's emails, Melinda's replies, the PI's surveillance, the Life 360 abuse. All of it. Melinda was subpoenaed. She tried to say she didn't know, that Jonas had tricked her too. But screenshots don't lie. When the judge read aloud the message, she wrote, "She's slipping," and looked her dead in the eye. I swear the room went silent. "She's not slipping," the judge said. "She's surviving." Jonas tried one last move. He requested joint custody with monitored support, claiming my mental state was under scrutiny. My therapist, whom I'd been seeing weekly, submitted a full report. It was clear. I wasn't unstable. I was grieving, and I was doing the work. Meanwhile, Jonas hadn't shown up to a single therapy session, not one parenting class, not even a formal mediation. The final ruling? I retained full legal and physical custody of Nora. Jonas would be allowed supervised visits twice a month, at a neutral facility. Any attempt to contact me directly would violate the restraining order and be grounds for arrest. Melinda didn't show her face in court again. I heard later through a mutual parent at the dance school that her own custody hearing didn't go well either. Apparently, the judge found her credibility questionable after our case came to light. Funny how that works. Now, life isn't perfect, but it's mine again. I work remotely, take Nora to school every morning, and we make pancakes every Saturday, just like Grandpa used to. She doesn't ask about her dad much anymore. When she does, I tell her the truth, that some people love the idea of being a parent more than the responsibility of it. And as for Jonas, I haven't seen him since court. The last I heard, he moved to another state. Melinda didn't go with him. Sometimes justice doesn't look like a dramatic showdown or a fiery revenge. Sometimes it looks like quiet mornings, clean boundaries, and the sound of your daughter laughing freely in a house no one is trying to take from you. I didn't win because I fought harder. I won because I stopped playing his game and built my own. If you've ever been through something like this, or if you've ever had to stand up when no one else would, comment a 2 below. I'd love to hear your story. And if you want to hear more true stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe. This might have been the end of my battle, but there are so many others still fighting.